there's no point if them making weight if they end up getting ill or they have severe health impacts and things like that.
You are listening to All Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. In this series, we're looking at the business side of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. In our episodes, we have conversations with professional athletes, BJJ brands, business experts, freelancers serving BJJ community, media personalities, and so on. Our today's guest is Mile Leng from Unorthodox Nutrition. Mike has been in the combat athlete nutrition business for over a decade, working with some of the best MMA and BJJ athletes in the UK. In this episode, we talk about Mike's introduction to nutrition, what the service actually includes beyond the weight cut, and some of the challenges BJJ athletes present compared with the other professional sports. This podcast is brought to you by alljujitsu.com, the world's first complete business platform for BJJ professionals. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Alright, we're live. Not live, we're recording. Mike, thanks for joining All Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Unorthodox Nutrition, very unorthodox name. How did you come up with this name?
It was a combination of a couple of things. When I very, very first started coaching, a very, very long time ago, people thought it was a very different way that I was doing things. So I've never ever subscribed to the idea that most nutritionists pick certain methods, whether it be fasting, low carb, keto, whatever it may be. I've always subscribed to what fits the person best. So at the time when people asked me kind of what my methods were, it was, what kind of shoe fits. So a lot of people kind of said, it's a very unorthodox way of doing it. It's not very usual, so I just kind of liked it, really. Then it was also a mix of the symbol of the company is something that my sister gave to me on a piece of jewellery for my 18th birthday, and that means an unorthodox way of doing things. Like, the piece of jewellery is long gone, but I always loved the symbol, so it just kind of connected at the two, really.
So embraced all the outside signals and took up the name. That's pretty good. And how long have you been in the business of nutrition?
11 years this year.
Amazing. And so in terms of your origins, how did you even get into this place? Okay, so we established the origins of the name, but overall, have you studied nutrition? How did you get into the business?
So it came basically through a lot of self-studying. Back when I very first started, I was very, very overweight, and I personally got in shape and things like that. And I was very active in the UK. There was something called the Cage Warriors forums back, when there was forums, and obviously Cage Warriors, the big MMA promotion. And I was very, very active on the nutrition side of it. There was a sub-forum in there, so I would talk to a lot of guys and just about nutrition, give advice, that kind of stuff. Or, my thoughts, not so much advice. And then people started to ask me, would you do this for us? Would you consider writing a diet plan? And it just started off that, really. They got great results with what we were doing. More people started to come. People were making weight easily, performing well, and it just kind of got to the point where people were saying, we want to buy nutrition plans. So the business came to me really out of a passion for it.
Nice, yeah, because what I see a lot of the times is somebody gets extensive education and they're fully kind of packaged beautiful product. They say, okay, we're a nutritionist, and then they're trying to sell this to their obviously prospective clients. Whereas with you, as I understand it, at least, it was kind of more to start with just a kind of self-help to an extent, right? And then trying to not even trying so much, but just organically kind of helping people, which grew into the business, right?
It did, yeah, where most people kind of the classical way of doing it is if they start a business, then they would try and find a market for that business, whether it be MMA and BJJ, or it might be CrossFit or bodybuilding or wherever it may be, and look for their niche where it kind of found me. So I was already in it and had a passion for it, plus nutrition, so it was already kind of picked out for me. And it was like a slow burn. It wasn't kind of I'm launching this business right now. It was the term is coined often quite frequently now as a side hustle. Like I was doing that as well as a job for a long, long time. Where it was about 5 or 6 years ago where I went full time with it. So it was kind of like it built up organically rather than, all in me going on it from the start.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of so you mentioned you started off with the Cage Warriors forum. So were you involved in any sort of, like, what was the attraction towards MMA, towards combat sports?
I very first got into it through most people, really. A friend of mine, like Mark, that was living at the time, said, "Mate, you've got to watch this." Showed me one of the first UFCs. I think it was UFC like 197 or 196 or something around that point. And watched it. I did martial arts when I was younger, but just the traditional type of stuff, nothing that constitutes like actual proper training. And just watched it straight away and thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And just started watching it through there. And then just started building up like a healthy passion of like the sport's amazing, and got into it through that, really.
Nice. And how was the scene back then in terms of, like, was it literally like a normality for people to search on the forums for nutritional advice before they have like a fight coming up?
Yeah, so it's quite strange to describe now, I suppose. There's a lot of people out there who've probably never been on like an online forum now with obviously social media, etc. So it was like a chat room that was broken down into subheadings. So there was one for training or MMA training, and under that you would have strength and conditioning, nutrition, So under the nutrition one, people would basically go on and go, what are people's thoughts on this, or does this supplement work, or I'm going to be cutting weight for the first time, what would your advice be, and that kind of thing. So I just kind of got involved in that, and then obviously only commented on stuff where I had an opinion on that I thought would like be valuable to somebody. Like at that point, I'd never had somebody cut weight or make weight, so I would never comment on those kind of posts. But as I built obviously experience through doing it with clients and things like that, I would offer my opinions and stuff like that. So, but it was very much kind of, back then, information was still not as freely available as what it was now. Like weight cutting was, even though it still is now, seen as a bit of a black magic, where, like the secret tips of the trade, and people were doing all kinds of crazy stuff and things like that. So, and back then, and same it is now, really, it's better now, but was not regulated. There was just some shows that would just have like kind of no medical supervision and things like that. Obviously, it's loads better now, but so it was a bit of a crazy time, really, to start getting into it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And then from there also, I've seen just from the list of your clients that you post on your social media and stuff. So now you have a good few specifically jiu-jitsu guys, right?
Yeah, I would say probably about 85% of the people that I work with are jiu-jitsu athletes now.
And when did that transition in terms of percentage split, right? When did it happen that the majority of your guys became from jiu-jitsu community?
It just kind of like segmented that way over it, as obviously as I developed more of an interest in jiu-jitsu and things like that. I just started to, as I gained a better understanding of the sport and the requirements of the training, competition, etc., I just kind of like started to comment on a lot more of those kind of things. Obviously, the jiu-jitsu is a very close-knit community, even still, you start to meet a lot of the same people, conversations start to happen. It just kind of built slowly over time, where it was the point of, you start, it's kind of like the belt system itself. You start working with a lot of people who are just kind of like starting out in jiu-jitsu, then you might start working with some serious belt competitors, and then you're getting brown belts who are asking for your help, and then black belts, and then all of a sudden I was very lucky for some people that come to me who were very, very well known, like national and international competitors, and say, look, I want help with this X, Y, and Z. So being very, very lucky in the people that I've worked with.
Who are some of the most kind of high profile guys you've worked with?
So currently, obviously, we've got guys that we work with currently. In the past, we've got Sam Cook, Samantha Cook, Leonie Muslow, Jamie Hughes in the UK scene. We've helped Dan Strauss. We've helped Chris Regan. We've helped Lloyd Cooper, Fionn Davies. There's been quite a lot, mostly UK-based guys. Well, Chris Regan's now in Bermuda, I suppose, but we've been lucky to work with quite a lot of the UK athletes.
So that's pretty awesome, and obviously our listeners would know a lot of these guys as well. And would you work usually with the guys on a kind of once-off basis, or is it like a continuous support, or is it a mix?
So most of the higher end guys they either have specific competitions that they're going to do throughout the year, and we work with them in the lead up to it. Some people, like Leonie Munslow, for example, we work with her year round. We then pick up like specific. So it all depends on their personal circumstances, what competitions they want to do. Some focus just mainly on sub only. So they might just pick out a couple of, like, say, Polaris or Grapple Fest, etc., that they're going to pick out and aren't bothered about IBJJF. So depending on what time of the year it is, we know that, let's say, someone like Lloyd is going to be competing on probably 2 or 3 of the Grapple Fests that are out through the year, and he's probably going to be picking up 1 or 2 Polarises, depending on the card. So we kind of structure trading towards them as well.
And would it all mostly be kind of around weight cuts?
A lot of it is basically working up to building a correct nutrition plan that will allow them to make weight easily, whether it's them reducing their weight over a specific period of time, and then being able to perform. On some, it is like weight cut. It depends on the competition. So, for example, Polaris does day before weigh-ins, so there's a bit of a different strategy there versus Grapple Fest that weighs in a couple of hours before the compete. And then IBJJF, you're literally weighing in and then competing. So depending on what competitions they're doing, depends on like what they do. And there is some athletes now, and it's moving more and more, that choose just to stay in a weight class year round, where they don't fluctuate as much, just purely because they feel a lot better.
Yeah. So I think there is still quite a good bit of misconception about the whole kind of profession of nutritionist. And I said a lot of people would probably view it as just purely weight cutting service. Right. So what's your view on this, and what would you, how would you describe what you actually do beyond just, structuring somebody's weight cut procedure?
Yeah. So it is actually something that very early on in my career I wanted to move away from. About a couple of years in, it was getting to the point where I would get a lot of messages, and it would be kind of like, I've got so many kilos to lose in 2 weeks. Can you help me? Or, I took a last minute fight or a last minute competition, and I made the decision that I didn't want to be like the quick fix guy where people would come to if they were struggling. So I would start to turn those clients down and say, look, like, what you actually need is, 2 to 3 months to lose that weight, or 6 weeks, or whatever it is. So for me, the priorities for all athletes and clients always is just health, then performance, and then weight if they're in a weight class sport. It always needs to be in those kind of things. Health is the goal of me as a nutritionist, to make them feel and perform better. There's no point in them making weight if they end up getting ill or they have severe health impacts and things like that. And then secondly is obviously performance. Performance is the majority of it after health, because that's where improvements are made. Improvements are made in the gym and on the mat, not like, cutting weight. That's like the end part of a process. What we're looking for is to be able to give them the correct tools to train to the maximum that they can make, so they can perform their best. What we're saying is a performance sport. It's just that people get focused on the weight and see that as a mini victory, where actually what we should be focusing on is your ability to play or perform in your sport.
Yeah, for sure. Like, even myself, I usually, when I compete in jiu-jitsu, I don't cut weight. I try to stay in the same weight class. And a couple of times that I did cut weight, like really rapidly, even 2-3 kilos over a couple of days, that absolutely killed me. I wasn't able to do anything on the mats, like out of strength, out of depth completely.
It is, and it's, as time goes on, weight cuts in and of themselves, either doing it or like a couple of kilos for a space of a couple of weeks, or towards more day before MMA type stuff, is slowly going to be phased out, just because of how much injury and problems that it causes. Something like I was talking about, that it is so serious. More people have died from bad weight cuts than have died in MMA being elbowed in the head. Like, it is a very, very serious, very, very serious thing that a lot of people can have serious health implications for getting it wrong.
It all sounds like common sense, right? I mean, if you, whatever you're saying is like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense. But do you still find that there are professionals in your field that operate under different premises? Like, okay, let's get this weight cut down, or so that flip that logic on its head.
Yeah, massively. It's always one of those things that if you came to them and said, look, I've got this guy and what he wants to lose 10 kilos in a week, they would turn around and go, well, that's ridiculous. Who would want to do that? That makes no sense at all. But when it's them, their drive to compete, often in a lot of the circumstances, takes out that common sense of their own health. You know, a lot of athletes, and it is very, very common, especially in like top level athletes, they will happily, like, I can't remember who did it, but they did a study on Olympians who basically said that we would guarantee you a gold medal, but it's going to knock 15 years off your life or 20 years or whatever it is. Pretty much over 90, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was over 90% of Olympic athletes would take the deal because they want to win that much. So they will happily park their own health or short-term ability to try and give themselves an edge to win. What we try and say is that you're actually, a lot of the time, hindering yourself by doing that, and it's old school thinking, you know, that filters down from wrestling and other combat sports, that, you know, lighter is better. Well, actually, better is better, where more and more people are either kind of seeing that they don't move weight-wise that far out of the weight class, so it's not so much of a harsh cut, or like yourself, where they stay within a range of a weight class year-round, and that allows them to train hard and be more likely to compete like they train, being able to educate them and try and get that flip for them and say, look, like, we are not just after making a number on a scale isn't the victory, you know, like, it's being able to perform is the victory, and it's being able to like try and find out why they think that way and actually like show them that there is another way of doing things.
And have you ever encountered any cases where by somebody took a fight or took a, you know, decided to compete in a particular event, and then your reaction would be, okay, no, we can't do this, it's not healthy, and they would actually take it and say, yeah, that makes sense, I will not go ahead with this?
Sometimes it's probably depending on the competitor and things like that and what they're trying to do, and it depends on the competition. So if you're talking about somebody who's going to compete in, let's say, the Manchester Open or something like that, they may listen to sense and move up a weight class. But if you speak to somebody who's about to go to Worlds, they might hear that and go, well, I'll just go work with somebody else who can do that for me then. I'm not bothered. Where I'm fine with that, you know, like it's, you know, if that's what you want, then that's absolutely fine. But that's not what we do. So it has been a bit of a split. Some listen and some don't. Some listen more over time. Some come back, like, won't listen to you, but then don't perform well, then come back afterwards and say, look, you were right. I want to compete in this at this weight. Right, well, this is how we're going to structure it. So it's one of those where I don't take the chance, because I couldn't ever forgive myself if anything happened to an athlete's health, and I wouldn't do it.
For sure. And so if we compare now, so we've given you exposure to different sports and different athletes from different disciplines, how much do they differ? Obviously there are weight classes, there's some sports don't have weight classes, but other than that, any major kind of differences in your approach to serving your clients, or the approach of those clients towards your service? What are the key differences?
So if we use jiu-jitsu as an example, jiu-jitsu is a very hard sport to program for nutritionally, purely because if you look at other sports, they, for a start, have generally an in-season and an off-season, where they have a period of time where they will play or compete, and then a period of time where it's an off-season, which allows them to, you know, focus on other things, get better, get stronger, etc. in off-season. Jiu-jitsu used to be, like, gi season used to run from about, like, just after Christmas, the New Year, till Worlds. And then after Worlds used to be no gi till Christmas, where it's not like that anymore, just because of sub-only, more competitions, you know, that kind of thing. Now people compete as much as they can year round. So programming intelligently for that is one thing. And the better athletes, like, it's not the better athletes, sorry, the athletes at the higher end of the sport will generally pick which ones they want to do. The second thing is programming for intensity of training sessions. So if we use football, for example, we know that when some people go in, they're going to be doing a skill-based practice that's going to be at a certain percentage of work rate. Then they're going to be playing practice games that's at a certain percent, and we've got game days, etc. And that's the same for rugby and other sports, etc. Where jiu-jitsu, you can go in and think, well, I'm going to have a light training session today, do some technique drills, start rolling. Your first one might be light, then all of a sudden the second person that you roll with, you might start there, then their intensity creeps up, you come to match them, they go up a bit more, and then all of a sudden you're having 2 or 3 hard rolls in the gym. So what was supposed to be a 50% or a 60% training session has become an 85% training session. So you're going to burn more calories, you're going to need to recover more from that. Have you fueled it correctly? You know, what's the price of actually having those too many hard training sessions together? That kind of thing. So structuring it that way, it's harder. And the only way to do it that we've found really is just constant adjustment as time goes on. Talking to the athletes, have you been training hard? How are you feeling? Are you feeling run down? Are you picking up injuries? You know, have you got niggles? How's your sleep? Another indicators that we use. There's a lot out there at the moment, and I'm still keeping my eye on it for great calorie trackers, heart rate monitors, and things that can be used while rolling. And it seems to be getting better and things like that. And there seems to be a few that seem to be getting out there. But they're still not reliable enough for us to use that as concrete data to base, like our data on. So jiu-jitsu is a very hard sport to program for, and then competition is completely different. So you might have a 15-minute only sub-only match is very, very different to going, let's say you are a lightweight purple belt going to the British Open. You might have to have 8 to 10 fights to actually even look before you get to the podium. The Euros even more, which is, you know, the biggest competition in the world. So how we do it and how we structure those things and how we feel training are very different. Where if you've got game day for rugby or football, for example, or a triathlon or whatever it may be, they are roughly the same kind of, you know, situations. You know, obviously every game is different, and I understand that, but you can plan accordingly for it. So jiu-jitsu, as it evolves and becomes many different factors of the same sport, becomes a lot harder to program for.
That's very interesting, and what you said about also the level of intensity, the predictable level of intensity in training as well. So just as a comparison, again, something I'm curious about, because in jiu-jitsu we have a culture of, or like even a saying like you compete or you perform in competition the same way as you train, right? Whereas you mentioned in some of the other sports, a lot of the times you perform, your intensity level is sub the levels that you would actually be expected to output in the actual competition. So how does this? So let's say in other sports, in your experience, would that level always be a little bit lower than the actual performance level in terms of intensity in training? Does it ever go to the peak?
Yeah. So, but generally a bit better planned. So when you look at other, obviously I'm talking about professional sports here, but they generally have some sessions that are on the light side, but they will have harder training sessions, and they generally increase as they go towards their in season. So there's a saying that everybody is created equal. Some just work harder in off season, or pre-season, which we don't have in jiu-jitsu because a lot of people don't take an off season, but they will peak coming into a season, so they will do a lot of base like strength and conditioning work and that kind of thing, building aerobic capacity before they move into doing more intense practices, etc. during the season. Or if they go into a competition, their intensity may go up like that and then come down a bit so they can peak correctly in competition. Where jiu-jitsu just goes like this. The hardest thing is because people love jiu-jitsu so much, is keeping them off the mat. I've seen it constantly over the years where we've talked to people where they're still rolling a week before competition and things like that, or rolling hard, or still doing this, or I'm just going to sneak in a session. I've been countless. One of the great things is I've been very lucky to go to most of the Polaris events and be backstage for them. And the night before people are competing, there's generally a gym and there's generally an open mat, and the fighters are in there still. I'm rolling and play, and things like that, and not at a high intensity, and they might just be practicing and things. But in a lot of sports, if it was the night before, you would see people just sat in hotel rooms. You would be, trying to get over jet lag or eating correctly or whatever. Where these guys are still, oh well, let's just go for a quick session. So, and that comes from a love of the sport and wanting to be doing it. And there is a very much of a culture in jiu-jitsu of being on the mat, is a good thing, and that kind of stuff. So. it is changing though. I can see it, like there's some great coaches out there who are really looking at like intensity of sessions and how things are structured and stuff for competitors coming into like competition. So it's a great time to be in the sport, to be honest.
I feel with that, and you're absolutely right, seeing the Polaris guys, there's always like, the pre-show kind of media that's been, the videos that's been released, and you see the guys just going for hard sessions the night before, the 2 nights before. I think it's probably also a psychological factor whereby people actually want the feeling of the role all the way leading up to it. So they might even understand it rationally that they probably shouldn't be doing it from the physical performance point of view, let their body rest, but it might give them a psychological advantage where they feel that kind of rush and the feeling of the role, and they're feeling fresh to an extent psychologically. I'd probably be the same, and again I understand that, and I used to basically, in my blue belt days and purple belt days, I would take the full week off before the competition. I would not do anything. I would train hard up until the week before, and then the last 5-6 days would do absolutely nothing but stretching and doing things. And then now I'm completely, now like reaching the black belt, I've actually flipped it, and I train hard all the way to the, like maybe just one day before I will stop training. But up until then I will, because psychologically that gives me an advantage, even though I know it might not be the best thing physically.
But there's also the benefit of, reaching black belt. There's kind of like you've got an innate ability of knowing when you might be pushing too hard in the gym and things like that, and psychologically back it back down for some rolls and things like that. Where I saw a great meme this morning that said, whoever said BJJ wasn't a real fight has never seen 2 white belts roll. And they're not backing down intensity. So sometimes I imagine it's for coaches is getting guys to look like you do want to calm down a little bit. And again, it depends on the level of competition. Like if you just go into a local comp, then that should be just how you like roll anyway. Where if you're training for Worlds or you're going a Polaris where there's like money on the line and things like that, or for some of these guys it's their livelihood. If they don't compete and win, then they're not going to get more opportunities, not going to get further up cards, they're not going to get sponsorship deals, these kind of things. So it's very different if it's for some people at the lower end to higher end. But it is interesting to just see so many people's different take on how they should do it.
Makes sense. And do you find it different working with people of different levels within jiu-jitsu? Obviously there's natural progression, and as you mentioned, there's an intrinsic understanding, better understanding, or improved understanding of your own body, of your own kind of regimen as you progress through the ranks, and the ranks just being the kind of representation of the time you spend essentially on the mats. Do you find it different working with different levels?
It is, yeah, but it's also kind of this trade-off. So if we take the example of a full-time black belt athlete who may also coach, do seminars, privates, etc., that's what they focus on. So they've got those sessions, and that's the only thing. Whereas if you've got, say, a very serious black belt who might not be their only job. They may have another full-time job. They might have 2 or 3 kids at home. They might have other hobbies. They've got other things that are happening with their life. So nutrition isn't just about balancing the stuff that happens on the mat. It's the rest of the life and things like that. So where the more serious competitors are, sometimes they're more compliant. Don't get me wrong, and it's no offense to everyone, but all clients they'll all tell fibs at some point. But they might be a little bit more compliant, but they've got less things that they've got to worry about. They haven't, or temptation it might be, or things like that. So there's always kind of trade-offs between the two. I will say though that the most compliant athletes are female athletes, and I can say that it just across the board. Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule, but if I had to do a mass generalization, female athletes are generally, if you say something, will generally do it and not think that they know better, and then you find out that they've actually done something else. Where sometimes you can get old school guys who might come to you and go, "Well, I've done it this way forever." So I'm not listening to this thing that you tell me. A classic example, and I'll name and shame him because he won't mind me doing it. It's Josh Parber. who's obviously an incredible black belt, brilliant competitor. Obviously, a lot of people know him as a commentator for Cage Warriors, Polaris, Fight to Win, other kind of stuff. He used to be, when I met Josh, like very overweight, and he lost a lot of weight through doing low carb. And every time I see Josh, like, unfortunately he lives in the States now, so I'm only lucky enough to catch up with him at like Polaris events. I talk to him about him eating carbohydrate all the time. He just won't do it. He's got such a fear of eating carbohydrate, like, that's based in nothing. And he knows it's not based in science or anything, but he's got such a fear of it that, like, he just won't do it no matter how many times I try it. And I've done prep for Josh for years and years, from the very first time that he won purple belt at the British Open all the way through to his last sub-only fight. Like, it is just trying to get him to do it. So there just isn't, it's not like uncompliance, it's more kind of thing. Or there's like the niggling voice somewhere in his head where 9 out of 10 times if a woman comes to you, you say, right, I want you to hop on one leg under a full moon, and they just won't question you. They'll just go, yeah, sure, and then just get it done. So, but it always is like horses for courses type thing. So, but I've kind of got off tangent on that one a bit, sorry.
No, no worries. It's quite interesting. I said probably again. I can imagine that you probably have to battle with a lot of these misconceptions that were popularized in, whether it's through kind of media or some other means over the years. Right? First it was the low fat diet, then it was low carb diet, then it low this, low that, as if there is a kind of one single way of doing things, which there probably isn't.
It's kind of like, the best way I can explain it to people is what I do in seminars and stuff, is what these things are methods. So, like, I love analogies, everyone's probably guessed, but a man who knows principles can pick his own methods. It's kind of what happens in nutrition, like, world, is very like culty and weird. So somebody like, for example, try low carb or paleo or keto or carnivore, whatever it is, and say, right, this is the only way to do it. All other nutritional strategies are rubbish and don't work. That's basically like saying, right, X guard is the only guard that works and no other guard does. So everybody who does close guard, or like whatever, sorry, that's rubbish, it doesn't work, they're kidding themselves. Like, that's rubbish, like, that's not true. It's just what picks best for the times or the situation or the person or whatever it is. So the problem is there's that much misinformation out there and so much like cultiness that this is the only way to try and get through to someone and say, well, actually, this is the scientific principles that you need to adhere to, but these are the methods that you can pick to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I think hopefully people do learn through jiu-jitsu and they use jiu-jitsu as the platform for learning this type of things. Like I would always tell my students or anybody else whoever looks for an opinion on this, anybody ever tells you, whether it's jiu-jitsu or any other discipline, that's the only way of doing things, you should probably walk away from them and disregard the opinion, because anybody who claims that probably just more wrapped in their ego than anything else.
Really good comparison, because it's kind of like when somebody asks a nutritional question or one of your students asks you something, they might say, oh, well, what happens if he grips here? Or what happens if they do this? And the answer generally is, well, it depends. It depends on the other type of the situation, you know what I mean? Things like that. It's not just, oh, well, if he does X, you do Y. Like, there's other kind of factors that are available. So it's, and hopefully if they can apply that critical thinking that they learn through jiu-jitsu, which is what jiu-jitsu essentially is, it's live critical thinking, to other problems, then they can start to see, you know, commonalities, etc. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about your actual product. So can you formulate what do you do and how do you package? So we obviously understand that you do nutrition, but let's say I'm your client, I reach out to you, I need a nutritional plan, whatever I need. So what do I actually get?
Okay, so the majority of the plans that we work with are based on time. The service is the same. The only thing the difference is the length of time that somebody wants to work with us. So, and that service starts out with generally conversation about what they're looking for, the goals that they want to achieve, why they want to achieve it, and that leads to like us doing a full evaluation of what they're currently doing, what they've done in the past, down to what their training looks like, current diet, foods they like, foods they dislike, you know, all that kind of thing, like a full evaluation. And then we set up a plan based on that. Now that plan is different for every single person. So some may have multiple small meals throughout the day that are specific foods. Some people might do fasting. Some people might do calorie or macro-based diets. Like, it all depends on the person. And then what happens from then is that person will execute the plan and check in with me throughout the weeks. Then we adjust the plan based on the results that they get and the circumstances that they have, which always changes. There's never anything that remains the same. So it's the coaching side of it. Like, for some people, if they work shift work, like or hard manual jobs, or they might not have the ability to either work for long periods of time, or they might have full-time childcare, or whatever it may be. We've got to structure things that fit with their lifestyle. It's no good a plan being wrote up that could be the perfect plan in the world, but if they can't stick to it, it doesn't matter. So it's very much of adjusting it. And that's where the majority of it comes. It's the ability to, through experience, adjust the right things at the right time that helps them and helps them achieve their goals. So, and that can be through a variety of different things. Then also, all clients get access to myself like 7 days a week. They can message me at any point going, "Oh, you know what? I've had to go on to a business lunch, or I don't think I'm going to make this meal, or I've heard about this type of food or this. Like, what's your opinion on it?" And just be able to help them along the way. So it's constant coaching they get, and support and accountability that leads to it, that leads to obviously towards their goal, whether it be you don't want to lose a specific amount of weight, they want to just look good by the, beside the pool on holiday, or they want to go compete at Worlds, like or the Olympics or whatever it may be. It's the coaching and the adjustments along the way that I think we just break it down by length of time that people want to work with us for.
Nice. And what kind of metrics do you take in to make those adjustments? So there's obviously some objective metrics like the weight, right? So the weight fluctuations from one point to another, but there are some more kind of subjective ones as to how do you feel, after the training session. So what else do you take in?
So obviously, like I said, there's quantitative ones that can be weight, measurements. Obviously, if they've got access to other kind of like biometric readings, even photos, then there's more, like you say, of how you're feeling. There's some sessions that you just will be more run down with after the other, but there's other ones kind of thing, how are you sleeping? Sometimes, are you still like, what's your sex drive like? That can be a big thing. A bit. What are stress levels like at work? How are you coping with them? How are you feeling emotionally? There's a lot of kind of factors that we're always like looking for. Even if sometimes biological ones, how often you go to the toilet? Are you still regular? Has anything kind of majorly changed that was before? Are you noticing anything else? Like, do you feel, a common one is sometimes people feeling hotter, and sweating a bit more and things like that. Can be a sign of metabolism and other kind of things. So it's about asking for specific metrics of when people come and say, look, I'm starting to feel this way, or I'm starting to feel that way. It's more keeping in, it's outside factors that can play a part. So somebody might be going brilliant all the way through a prep towards competition, and then somebody gets fired at their work and their workload doubles, or they get laid off, or obviously what's happening at the moment. There was loads of people who were coming up to PANs and Worlds and things like that. Polaris events that was just cancelled, Grapple Fest events that were just cancelled. So life happens constantly. So it's the ability to be able to go in them and ask the right questions depending on what they're saying that allow us to adjust.
What about your professional development? So you obviously have a wealth of knowledge that you've accumulated over the years. How do you ensure that you continue developing, that you are kind of staying on the forefront of the industry?
So I suppose it's like anybody. I believe in either being coached by other people or being very lucky to have people that I can reach out and talk to. There's been some like great guys that I've been very, very lucky for nutritionally to be able to speak to. Over in the States, you've got guys like Alan Aragon, Shelby Starnes, John Meadows. These guys have all like helped me previously. Guy like coaches in the industry, like people like that I've had chats with, like Peter Irvin, Rosie Sexton, and various others who are incredibly smart people. It's about me trying to seek out those resources and learn from them, but also educating myself on obviously even things just like research and stuff like that. Like obviously I mentioned somebody called Alan Aragon who's got a brilliant thing where he has like a research published review that puts out regular research and evaluates it, etc. So it's a fantastic product. And then business wise, it's a case of trying to, again, look at resources, books, a lot of books that, classic business books that a lot of people talk about, trying to find ones that I think apply to my kind of situation, ones that don't, trying things, not trying things, like in my early career, I spent a lot of money on print advertising in, like print magazines, like Fights Only and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that just wasn't effective for me. It wasn't an effective type of marketing. So trying different things and adjusting as you go, really. I think it's always the thing is that there's always more to learn and being open to trying to learn it.
Let's elaborate a little bit on this, now kind of addressing slightly different audience, the people who are in the nutrition business or trying to enter this industry from this angle. What are some of the kind of key learnings and how, actually let's rewind a bit. If you were to explain how your business is structured, okay, aside from the actual nutritional elements of it and working with the athletes, so business side, how is it structured, how do you operate, and some of the key learnings, potentially some of the mistakes you mentioned, the print advertising and stuff like this, so how has that changed over the last 11 years or so?
So with my particular business, obviously, it's an online-based business, so both lucky and sometimes cursed that I can work from it anywhere. So it's very much kind of structured that I can work from anywhere. So there's been countless times where I've even gone on family holidays and things like that. I always need to make sure that there's somewhere where I can check email and that kind of stuff. Not every day I'll be obsessive with it, but it's something that needs to be done, especially when people have competitions coming up. The business obviously is structured as it's just myself on an Unorthodox Nutrition side of it. But we also have Unorthodox Performance, which is kind of, I suppose, like a franchise is the best way to look at it, which is run by Ben Robson. He also offers nutrition and strength and conditioning. Obviously, he's currently doing his PhD in exercise science. So we branched out into that 2 years ago. So we operate between the two platforms. The business is very much structured to be an online-based business, where obviously we do a lot of things in person. One of my favourite things to do is seminars, but it is like set up to be structured as something that we can't operate really online.
And some of the kind of key learnings, maybe some of the mistakes that you've committed previously and something you wouldn't do again, or vice versa, something that you've learned and you've implemented along the way.
So obviously the advertising was one. Something that I very strongly believe in, that I got very lucky. There's a bit of a trend, like you see quite a lot, especially in creative industries, that not to do work for free. That your work is worth something. And I do agree with that to a certain point, but I think it depends on where you are in your career. Like I was very lucky that a lot of people gave me the platform to write for online platforms, or even in MMA Unlimited, Jay Furness, like these guys give me platforms to be able to write nutritional articles and do Q&As, etc. Callum Medcraft, like BJJ Style, I had a monthly column in there, is being able to put content out. And at the start, I did a lot for free, and didn't want to be charged for it. But that gave me the platform to get in front of people. It was only later in my career that I did it. I started had the ability to say, well, I'll charge for articles and things like that and that kind of stuff. But I think that was a correct decision that I made at the time, where a lot of people were telling me not to do it and not to do work for free. That you should if you do work, you should be paid. But I always thought that it's doing this now that will allow me to do something later. And somebody very, very gave me advice earlier on that everybody has an opinion, but that doesn't mean your opinion is worth anything. You need to get to the point where your opinion is considered to be worth something, where you should be voicing it. And what he meant by that is not to be dragged into arguing online with people about things. One of the things I always try to stay away from is, if somebody wants to have a discussion about a certain thing, they're more than happy to, or any kind of critique, that's fine, and message me and I'll happily talk to anybody, but never kind of get dragged onto an online argument, because you're never going to convince the other person, and it's never going to turn out well for anybody. So it was one of the good piece of advice that I got early on in my career. Mistakes, there's been tons. One thing that you like, I think a lot of people are kind of guilty of is that you get attracted by like a shiny object. You know, a lot of people, oh, you should be writing ebooks, you should be doing affiliate marketing, you should be doing this, you should be building a list, you should be, should be vlogging, you should be doing this, da 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 da. And I think that sometimes like I've been distracted by trying to do one too many things, where what I should have really been doing is just doubling down on certain things. You know, like helping people should always be at the forefront of it. You know, helping every single person that messages you. Like I love writing articles. Like, I think it's just like the ability to double down on what you know that you're good at and not try and do a bit of everything. And I was being very guilty of putting like time into other things and stuff like that, or writing ebooks and all that kind of thing. I'm not saying that none of that works. I'm just kind of saying that you should do what you feel is best. But the only way you got to know that, I suppose, is to try. And that's a terrible piece of advice, to tell people just to try everything and fail at 90% of it.
Again, going back to what we said previously, right? If somebody tries to convince you that one particular way is the best way of doing things, it's probably not a solid advice, right? You know what I mean? Like if somebody tells you the only way to succeed in this business is ebooks or whatever else, again, we again narrowing ourselves down to a specific method rather than the principle.
I think it all comes down to, and I think that like Matt, who you had on pre, Matt Benyon, who's a great guy, who's kind of said that one of the things that they're always committed to, and I've seen it behind the scenes, is their customer service. So the levels that they go to deliver good customer service to people, and I think that's always got to be the forefront of it. And sometimes, and you kind of see it sometimes in jiu-jitsu now, where people are kind of becoming personalities, and they think that, they started drifting to becoming something they're not, when you realise that actually, the people who are interacting with you or coming up to talk to you at shows and things like that, these are the people who are providing the livelihood for you. You are not above these people. Like, it's jiu-jitsu, 99% of the population have no idea who you are. It's customer service and being there for people who, like, are coming to you and, helping you, like, by giving you their money for your livelihood, should be your number one priority. And I think when you start to drift away from that is when you kind of, or put yourself above that, is when you kind of run into problems.
Indeed. And another kind of interesting thing for me would be the difference in your approach when you are coaching someone continuously versus a seminar, right? Because it's fundamentally different timeline, right? The seminar is like a quick bit of information delivered. How do you ensure that people get something out of the seminar?
So seminars are generally structured on what the gym wants, same as like when anybody comes to a seminar. So most people look at like diet setup, how you should go about setting up a basic diet before you start doing the adjustments. We cover quite a bit of that. Or what should competition day look like, or whatever it may be. And I generally structure like about 40 minutes to an hour around that. Then it's the Q&A bit at the end. Now this is the bit where it's kind of like, it's a bit easier for me versus like somebody who's doing a seminar in jiu-jitsu, because I can sometimes with more concise answers, where Q&A, like sometimes like you can kind of go down the rabbit hole of a technique and things like that. So, and a lot of nutrition actually. So that's the bit where I think people always get the most value out of it, of like what kind of, and it's generally a specific question of what do you think of this supplement, what do you think of this diet. Like, I've tried to cut to this weight a couple of times, but I can't. Sometimes people like say things like, I can only lose weight if I do X, and I was like, well, the only thing where that's viable is the only thing you can do to lose weight is create a calorie deficit. So, like, how you do that, there's many different reasons. But a seminar, it's more of an interactive thing rather than like taking somebody through how to do and apply a specific technique. Where obviously it's a bit different when it comes to nutrition. But seminars are something that I really love to do, because obviously a lot of my work is online. Like, I've met at some seminars, some guys like that I've worked with for years, but I've never met in person, which is crazy. or sometimes like seminars are the only times I get a chance to go and see people that I've known for years. And like Nathan Leverton over at like Leicester Shoot, one of my favourite people ever, but I only get to see him when I go to seminars. Like I had a few seminars booked in for like this month. I think at the weekend I was supposed to be up in Edinburgh doing one, but obviously all that's been cancelled at the moment. So I'm a bit gutted about that because it is one of my favourite things to do.
Yeah, again, very interesting. Okay, another part of your kind of service offering that I don't know if you still do that. Just had a quick scan through your website as well, and there was a section on the product reviews. So, do you still do product reviews?
It's something I'm starting up again this year. Something I did for a very long time, and it kind of like just because of time constraints and things like that. As the business went on, I kind of like shelved it for the past few years. But yeah, it's something that I want to start doing again because I think it is one of the most popular areas of the website. A lot of people ask us questions about it, and I've still got like I'm not affiliated with any supplement company or anything like that. In the past, I had a good relationship with My Protein. They would send me product to review, and they were very happy if I gave good or bad reviews. Like if you go to the website, there's some products that say good that they've got, and others I'm going like this is absolutely terrible. Like you should not buy this. Whereas other companies have sent me stuff, I've not given it a good review, and then obviously vanished into nothing because they want or copy approval on them and things like that. So it is something that like I am going to be bringing back this year.
And what is the role of the supplements in your programs, or in general? How do you see the role of the supplements in jiu-jitsu?
So the main word there is obviously to supplement a diet. So again, the nice to haves in certain situations, but no supplement is essential. And sometimes some people don't want to take supplements. That's absolutely fine. Some ones that we take for things like health. So it might be for grapplers like, fish oil or krill oil or things like that, helps with joint issues, joint inflammation. Sometimes it might be protein powders that help with protein intake just for ease of use. Sometimes it's specific things like a carbohydrate powder to support specific types of training. But again, none of this is like essential. Everything's built around food. But it's generally either minerals or vitamins that people take, carbohydrate powders, protein, that's pretty much it. Creatine, obviously, is a very, very well-researched supplement, but we're not planning like crazy pre-workouts and all that kind of stuff, and that generally kind of we stay away from.
Makes sense as well. And so you said majority of your clients are obviously from the UK, so it's the same geographical region. Do you have anybody way outside of UK?
We have done some guys obviously in the US, some guys in Thailand. So like I've mentioned Chris Regan, who lives out in Bermuda currently, who's a very active black belt UK competitor, but now lives out there. So we do like work with anybody for everyone. It is pretty much like a UK market, just purely because that's where I've built, my client base, my reputation, etc. But we have worked because it is an online business. We can work with anybody everywhere, and the difference is sometimes, and we get it a lot when people travel to compete as well, like UK athletes who might go out to Worlds or, to EBI or wherever they're going. Like we have to look at what foods they can get out over there and what things are available, etc. Obviously, the US is great. The US is like loads better than here. You can get anything. But there's other things like such as, when people go to Thailand to fight, well, I can't get a hold of X, Y, and Z, so we've got to make adjustments, etc.
So some impact for sure on the just availability of the produce and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And for better and worse, some places you go, their produce is phenomenal, and some places you just can't get specific things. So if you go compete in Muslim countries, etc., like or like Egypt, etc., you can't get a hold of like pork. Yeah, you can't get hold of pork, sorry. So like there's certain things or certain animals that you might not be able to get hold of as easily, or people might not want to eat, or some countries that you might want to stay away from fresh fruits and vegetables, like before the cook, etc. For stomach issues. There's a lot of things, but provides a unique challenge.
And do you see any changes, growth or otherwise, in the athletes that adopt a specific diet, whether it's vegan or vegetarian? Do you have clients with these requirements?
So Not really, because it's all individualized. The main thing is that they all must follow the same principles. So you mentioned obviously like vegan and vegetarian. We work with a lot of vegan and vegetarians. Like Ben Robson of Unorthodox Nutrition is a vegan. So obviously it's something that we have like good working knowledge of. But there's things that, so for vegan and vegetarian athletes, we've got to make sure that they've got enough like complete protein in the diet to be able to get, you know, the same results as like somebody who's omnivorous or a meat eater might get. But it's also applying things like you see a lot of people who weren't vegan or vegetarian start it and then all of a sudden reporting that they feel amazing. Well, they might have gone from eating no fruits or vegetables to start eating a diet predominantly made of them. So, you know, they are going to feel amazing. So it's sometimes taking certain things from certain diets and making sure that people have like ways to get these things. Like we speak to a lot of people who, I don't like vegetables. Well, you know, they're so unbelievably good for you. We're going to have to find ways to work them into your diet. But it's always the same kind of things, like making sure for athletes that they're taking a correct amount of protein. Obviously, calories plays is a very individualistic but a massive part of it. Making sure athletes are fully hydrated, that's a massive one. Especially as we come into summer months, every gym is just a sweat box and people get dehydrated training. There's cramps generally all over the place, things like that. And then other supplementation and things like that we found very well is, again, touching on fish oil, etc., and krill oil for grapplers, joint issues, gi guys who wake up and go like this with their hands because their hands hurt so much, reducing that inflammation. In the winter, especially, you know, up north in the UK, like making sure people are taking vitamin D, that's a massive one. Sometimes an iron supplement for females. There's a few, but it's always kind of all centered around health and trying to promote those within athletes. But I wouldn't say there was one kind of like, oh yeah, we predominantly use fasting or something like that. You know, like it's very, very individualistic.
Makes sense again. So just to kind of finish off, we mentioned that there's no kind of defined or uniform methods to certain things, so you can achieve specific results via different methods. But are there any core principles that you could say, okay, everybody should do this or shouldn't do this or otherwise? So positive principles and misconceptions.
Okay. So the first one for a principle I would say is that the thing that will impact the most people is getting an idea of exactly how many calories that they need to take to maintain their current weight, increase it or decrease it. When they know how many calories that they need on an average day, that will give them more flexibility on the nutrition that they want. And that will open so many doors for them, because most people have no idea what this number is, you know. So trying to find that out, whether it's doing an online free calorie calculator or anything like that, just starting and monitoring your weight to see if it's going up or down or where you need to be to maintain it, because that will add so much to people. Second is making sure they take up an adequate amount of protein. So 1 gram per pound or 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight. That again will play a massive part in recovery, you know, how they feel on the mats, you know, just generally the body composition a lot better. Third, hydration. Make sure they're correctly hydrated. A lot of people just aren't. Amounts different for everyone, everywhere between 2 to 4 litres, a bit higher on training days. Make sure your wee's clear all the time. Principles that you don't want to be doing. Again, it goes back to if anybody's trying to convince you of a method that's the only way to do something, they're probably trying to sell you something. So don't do it. Don't take any supplement that's got a massive jacked, ripped bodybuilder on the label, because they're probably trying to take your money. Or anything that offers miracle results. This person added 10 pounds of muscle and lost 19 pounds of fat and all that kind of rubbish. But overall of that is the same thing as jiu-jitsu. I imagine my opinion is not worth much on jiu-jitsu, but consistency over time. You know, most people don't realise compounded interest in business. You know, like compounded consistency over time will get you where you need to go. It's that bit that people can't do. People can find information, people can do it. It's the people who can become dedicated and do it over a period of time that get the results. Everybody kind of wants to take shortcuts. Same as jiu-jitsu, white belts start to watch YouTube videos on the first day and stuff like that, rather than trying to get basics down. People look for miracle diet cures rather than think, well, actually what you want to do is not eat like a child for a long period of time. Eat your fruits and vegetables, eat protein and train hard, and you'll get the results that you want. Obviously, there's a lot of differentiation. I'm being very simplistic, but it's the consistency side of it that will do the most for most people.
And so far it has been, and I think I expect it to continue in the same fashion. I think it will be probably one of the key outtakes from every conversation we've had so far, and said it's probably going to continue into the future. Doesn't matter what business you're in, what sport you're in, consistency is always there. So as a primary factor for any success in anything. So again, it makes a lot of sense.
There's a lot of people who refer to it as the grind, which I don't really like that saying, because if it's a grind, it shouldn't really. The bit of it that should be, and there's always going to be bad times in business or in sport or anything, and bits that you don't like, like no one likes doing the taxes, etc., or paperwork, but it's finding something where you've got that ability to keep going, whether it is business or whatever. That's going to be the bit. Like, obviously, I don't want to sound as though I'm preaching, because I'm very fortunate to do what I do, and I love what I do. But again, I think it's the easiest thing in the world to say, "Oh, well, just be consistent for 11 years and you'll be able to do it." But most people will listen to that and think, "Jesus, that's half my life." So I'm more than that. So I think it's the easiest thing in the world to say, but quite hard to do.
But if enough smart people say it, maybe people will take a note, and again, one day at a time, and time will pass, sooner. Even with this lockdown now, it's been second month now rolling, and it only feels like it started yesterday. So again, time passes quite quickly. We will include a lot of your contact details, your website, and everything into the show notes and into the intro for this podcast. But Mike, thanks very much for joining, and thanks for serving the jiu-jitsu community so well.
Really happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you do, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.